Hi and welcome to a Jillibean Soup tutorial. I'm Jen Gallacher. Today we're going to use this fun stamp set and we're going to use this small circle shaker as well as this card to create a globe shaker card. So let's get started. So for this particular card we're going to take a piece of blue cardstock, and I picked one that was kind of an ocean blue or a pool color. And it does have a textured side, but when I'm stamping detailed pieces, I like the smoother side. So I'm actually going to adhere it to the card so that the smooth side is the part that is facing up. So then I'm going to close the card here, and I'm going to trace the inner circle here. Now I could use the globe part of the stamp and I could place it right here, but I am actually going to open it up to do some stamping so that I get the best detail on my stamped image as much as possible. So using that piece as a guide, that circle that I've made, I'll move the stamp around until I have it exactly how I want it. And then I'll close my stamping apparatus and pick up that stamp. Now you can use a bunch of different stamping inks. I'm going to show you a fun technique that we haven't used yet in one of our videos to show you another way you can add some shimmer and shine to your project. So I'm going to add some gold embossing ink for the actual globe image. So I always recommend for embossing that you use a clear Versamark stamp pad. You can see it looks like it's cream, but it's actually clear. And what it does is it's quite tacky and it creates this sticky look to your stamp. And so when you stamp it onto your paper, as you press firmly, what you're actually going to get is you're going to get this detail piece here. And you can see that I could leave it like this. The nice thing about the Versamark ink stamp pad is it pulls out the color here from the ink pad, or rather the paper behind it. So it pulls a darker pool color. But now we're going to add some gold embossing powder to this piece. So I've used the Versamark ink pad. I've placed the card on a folded sheet of printer paper, and I will generously sprinkle the gold embossing powder right on top of that stamped image. And you can see that I've covered it really, really well. And then I'll just use my finger and tap off any excess. And then because I've added a fold into this printer paper, what it allows me to do is just kind of dump that embossing powder right back into the jar, and then I don't lose as much. I'll close that right back up. Now I'm using a heat gun, and when you're using a heat gun, you don't want your fingers anywhere near this heat source, and you never want to touch this heat source. But I'm going to turn it on, and I'll get a little bit closer so you can see how this kind of brown powder is going to start to turn gold. So you can see that it now has a foil piece to it. Now I don't know if you can tell, but see how my cardstock is kind of folding up? Here's a quick tip. Just turn it over and heat it from the other side, and that will flatten your paper again. Now we'll turn it back over, and we're going to go ahead and erase that pencil mark that I made earlier. Get all of that pencil mark out of there. And then what we're left with is this open gold foil globe design. And that adds a little bit of shimmer and shine to your project. And this is what it looks like when it is closed. So we're going to continue the gold embossed theme by placing the globe portion, the outside, onto my stamping apparatus. And I'm going to come back with that Versamark ink pad again. I think it'll be really pretty with the tone on tone. The biggest thing when you're stamping this image is you want to make sure the bottom of the globe holder runs perpendicular to your page or parallel to the bottom. So you don't want it to not be straight. All right, it's hard to tell on the white, but once we add the powder to it, you'll be able to see it come together a little bit. So open it up, and when I dust on the powder, you'll be able to see the stamped image. You can see there isn't quite enough embossing powder at the top here, so I'll go back in and add a little bit more so that I get a nice looking glow thing. So now dump it back in and let's heat set this next piece. All right, we want to open the card this time to do our heat setting because I don't want to add any more heat to where I've embossed because it starts to change the look. So again, don't put your fingers anywhere near the heat source and then start heat embossing. So you can see the gold, and once again I'm going to flatten out this paper by heating it from the other side. So this is what it looks like when it is closed, and you can see how that gold just shimmers and shines. So we're going to add in some more earthy colors with this green cardstock. Again, it is textured on one side, smooth on the other, and I want the smooth side facing up. And I've cut it so that the bottom of this globe holder piece goes right to the top of this green cardstock piece. So think about these things when you are cutting and adding additional embellishments to your card. So for the sentiment, we're going to be using this fun phrase that says, "Sending bright and sunny wishes." I am stamping it onto the pool cardstock that I used from the inside of the card. And I've just cut a rectangle. I'm not worried about it being straight because I'm actually going to cut out this sentiment in a shape, and I'll show you what I mean. So just make sure that you get a nice clear phrase onto your piece. Then I'm using a 1 3/4 inch circle, and I am going to place it in my punch so that more of the sentiment is towards the bottom and less is towards the top, because I am going to cut off part of the top. And then you can just punch that out, and then just use some scissors and cut the phrase just a little bit above the word "sending" so that you have a half circle sentiment. So using that same technique, I stamped the phrase "Bon Voyage," and these are two separate stamps with the black memento ink on craft cardstock. This time I'm using a 1 3/8 inch circle punch, and I am centering the phrase. So we have two circles here. Now we can place them on our card. We will add the brown "Bon Voyage" first. And the key here is just to make sure that your word "voyage" runs straight. And then we'll do the half circle that we stamped and cut earlier before. And this will slightly overlap. Just make sure that you can read your stamped image for "Bon Voyage." And then you get this nice finished piece on the bottom here. So you know I like to decorate the inside of my cards. So you could do a couple of different things. You could just leave the globe as is. It's really a pretty decorative element. Or you could have stamped a circle here and placed it on top, and then you would have had a different design there. You can use that same globe holder and you could place it around and stamp it either in that gold embossing powder again or a black. Or something fun that you can try is this has a coordinating die with it. And I want to show you what happens when you cut a die out and place it on top of your stamped image. So I have placed my stamp onto craft cardstock. We're going to use the Versamark ink pad again. And we'll ink the outside of that image. Let's get some nice good coverage on it. And then press that firmly into our apparatus. And then this is what you get. Now, instead of embossing this, I'm just going to leave this as is. Now, this particular stamping ink pad is a great investment because what ends up happening is that by darkening all of your cardstock colors, it almost looks like I have more inks than I actually do. So now we can take the die that comes with this set and we can run it through our manual die cut machine. So I have my Big Shot, I have my magnetic plate, a clear cutting plate, I have my stamped image, and then I have the die. Make sure that you place the die so that that edge goes down onto the piece that you want to die cut. And I'll just get that nice and centered. And you need to move the die around until it is perfectly centered around the shape that you're going to cut. And you may need to move it around a little bit until you get that placement pretty perfect. A little bit of wiggle room is okay. Another clear cutting plate on top. And if you have that happen where you have a die wiggle, then I suggest you use some tape to hold that die in place. So sometimes even with a magnetic platform, as you are moving things around, the die will shift a little bit. And to ensure that doesn't happen, I'll just use some tape and that will hold it in place. And then when I run it through my die machine, nothing wiggles. So here's how it looks with the die cut out. And I love it because it cuts that piece out from the inside. So then I can take my card and I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of this stamp and die cut piece. I'm just using a dot runner adhesive. You can use whatever adhesive you like. And then again, make sure as you are placing this down that the bottom of the shape of the holder runs right along the bottom here, so it is parallel. So let's add a stamped sentiment on the inside of our card. I'll bring back my Misty. I will keep the card open for this. And then we'll use the phrase, "See the world with me." And I'm going to center the word world rather, underneath the bottom of that piece. Close that up, and I'll use some Memento stamping ink. So the front of this card and the inside are a little bit different, which I like. So just press firmly so you get a nice sentiment. And this is how it looks. So I like to have things from the inside carry over to the outside or vice versa. So I have the green here on the outside of the card. So I'm going to add another strip of that cardstock on the inside of my card. Then we'll close that up and we're going to add a few little enamel dots in kind of that same blue pool color, just to add some dimension there. And now we can add our shaker bits to kind of finish off this cool masculine card. So for this particular globe shaker card, you will need one of the small shaker circles. Just remove that backing, open up your card, and then for the filler for this, we have several different wood shapes, and I think the star will look awesome with this. Close it up and just press firmly. So you can see the star here on the front, and then when you open it up, it also has the star on the inside. So for a final embellishment, I'm taking an actual piece of gold cardstock. Now you could use a yellow if you want. This is actually a gold. And I'll add adhesive to the back of it. I have already cut it so that it will run the entire length of my card. And what this does is it gives this base piece a little bit more solidity, plus it brings in some of that shimmer and shine that we've used above in the embossing powder. So here you have a card that uses the globe stamp and die set and the small circle shaker card and shaker. Some star fillers. Here is the outside again, and here is the inside. If you enjoyed this card, be sure to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For additional inspiration, visit our website and blog.